Happy Thursday, guys. Dathon and Nathan here, back at you live. 1 o'clock, right on the dot. What's up, Nathan?
We nailed it, man. Dude, we're just crushing it. We got to see if we can hit that 1 o'clock next week on the dot as well.
That's going to be the key here. Thanks, guys, for those of you that are joining us, or we'll give a few moments for people to join. We had a lot of fun doing last week's broadcast, but we also got a lot of great feedback from some of our agents. So we wanted to come on here today and talk about communication. You know, after last week's broadcast, Nathan and I were talking about some important, parts of it. And while, certainly database is incredibly important, organizing your database, incredibly important. We really felt like the very first thing y'all have to do is establish an effective communication plan, a communication strategy that you can implement in your business today. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the importance of a communication plan. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is a communication plan? What is the purpose of communication? Okay. We're going to talk about what our opinion is of the most important aspect of communication. And finally, we're going to talk about the different types of communication plans. One for sort of a master communication plan if you're working with buyers, what that looks like, a master communication plan if you're working with sellers, what that looks like, or if you're working with tenants, which is actually really important. A lot of you agents out there don't like working with leases, but what do you say about leases, Nathan?
It's the fastest way to grow a database. Everybody cringes whenever I say leases, but I'll say it over and over again. I don't even care.
Yeah. So thanks guys for joining us. We're gonna, so Nathan, what's going on, man? Do you have any ideas on communication?
Absolutely. And I was just going to add to this because I know last week we teased, we were going to talk about organizing your database. That's not going to happen just yet. We'll organize your database maybe next week, maybe the next week. But first, we'd kind of figured out you probably need to figure out how you're even going to communicate to them before you can even go start to communicate, or before you can start to organize your database.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is going to be good because most importantly with communication, Dathon and I were just talking about this before we went live, is not just the people during the deals, when you have a buyer, when you have a seller, when you have a lease client, but more importantly, the communication before they become a client and the communication after they become a client. Because obviously this entire series is about growing your business and talking database. So do we want to hit them with some examples of how important it is?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've worked with a lot of our agents before, and I know, well, tell them. I mean, we were talking about Kim and her experience with you when you were looking at her database, and you want to tell that story?
Yeah. So Kim is a great example. Hi, Kim. She knows we're talking about her, by the way. We don't even have to say her last name. But she had a really great example of just communicating with your database and continuing to communicate with them after the deal is done, not treating people transactionally. She had a client, and back up a little bit. She came to us and she said, "Hey, I want to grow my business." We started coaching her. One of the first things we had her do was start communicating with her database right out of the gate. In 90 days, her business completely turned around. And one of the most iconic things, or the biggest thing that stuck out, was, I want to say it was within the first 30 days, she reached out and she said, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe what just happened." And I said, "Well, what?" She was like, "Well, I just sold a guy a house less than a year ago." It was almost, I think it was like 10 months before she sold this guy a house. And he said, "I'm so glad you called. I met someone. We're now engaged. We want to put this current home that you helped us buy up for rent, and we want to go buy a house. And we were about to go with my fiance's agent, but you called me. And she called us basically thanking us, saying, I would have not reached out to this person had you not have said you need to call your database. And that rings true for the past decade and a half that I've been in the business, where agents are like, I don't stay in front of my database. And that is a perfect example of staying in front of your database. If you think about it, that equated to 3 deals off of 1 client in a year just by calling your database. And she hadn't even stayed in touch with them. She was probably, who knows, maybe 2 weeks away from losing a buy sell if she hadn't stayed in front of that person.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is key. And that's what we're talking about, guys. We're talking about database. And I think there are 2 important things to consider when you're establishing a communication plan with your clients, right? One, communication is the key to any successful relationship, whether it's a business relationship, personal relationship. And I think as individuals, we tend to communicate the way that we want to be communicated to, right? And that really is not the right approach. So what a communication plan does is it allows you to understand, allows you the opportunity to have an open discussion with your clients about how they want to be communicated to, right? So that's really the first part of what we're going to talk about. Like, what is the purpose of communication, right? So communication, what is the purpose of communication? Number one, it helps with decision making, and it's to inform. Okay, so if you're during a deal, if you got a deal with your client, obviously, timelines, information about the deal, that sort of stuff is why you communicate. Now, I think it's really, really important when you first sit down with your clients to have that discussion about how they want to be communicated with. Okay. Is it via text? Is it phone call? Is it email? Is it a combination of both? If it's during the day, during business hours, do they want an email because they can't receive phone calls or texts at work? And really, what is the most effective way of delivering that information quickly so that they can make better decisions, right? So you've got to establish that, guys. You've got to establish how they want to be communicated with, and break it up. If it's, like I said, if it's during business hours, I want to be communicated this way. If it's on the weekends or at night, either A, don't call me, I don't want to be disturbed, or only if it's an emergency, call me. Or yeah, sure, feel free. I don't mind receiving, texts and calls on the weekends. But don't email me because I'm not going to check my email until Monday. And if it's important information, I want to make sure to receive it. So those kind of details are really, really, really important when it comes to effective communication. The next thing we have on here is it just helps ensure a smooth business transaction. So it really helps with the flow of the transaction. So establishing an effective communication plan, not only with your clients, but the other principals involved in the transaction is key as well. So whether it's with your lender or if you're the listing agent, if it's the buyer's lender, the title company, all of those types of players in the transaction, it is really, really important to establish a communication plan with them. That way you can ensure they're receiving your communication and the transaction will go a little bit smoother. And then the third thing, I think the third purpose of communication is to provide that 5-star customer service experience, right? It's really an opportunity for you to sit down with your client and show them why they made the right decision to go with you as a real estate agent. Okay. I can tell you right now that if you sit down and you have a discussion, you take a moment to discuss what your communication plan is, then that client is going to leave that meeting feeling very confident that they made the right choice. Okay. Because effective communication is that's what we want. That is the key to a successful relationship. Right. And by far, one of the number one things that, that I hear, that our All City Leadership Alliance hears, that we hear on the 833 Just Ask number, or the Kevin, it's all about anything that ever goes wrong. It's because of a breakdown in communication. So we really want to help you outline that communication plan. So Nathan, let's talk a little bit about effective communication. Okay. What does effective communication look like? Number one, it's clear and unambiguous. Okay. Even with our own staff, when we're communicating with our agents, we want to make sure that we're as clear as possible. And sometimes I tend to personally over explain, and, people are like, Dathan, I get it, but that's really important to me. Clear communication, that it's unambiguous. Nathan, do you have anything to say about that?
No, but you pretty much just nailed it right there. But
Yeah.
bring it home.
Number two,
over communicate, if you will, which we'll talk about in a second, by the way.
Yeah, over communicate. No one ever will fault you for over communicating. No one ever will say, my gosh, Dathan, that guy is so annoying. He tells me too much. He gives me too much info. I'm too informed. That's, no one's ever going to accuse you of that. But if you have an effective communication plan, you're going to have a clear understanding of the type of information that your clients want, when they want it. And so you really got to dial that in. To be transparent, be clear, unambiguous, and transparent. Contextual. Make sure the information is relevant, guys, to what your relationship is. This is what Nathan and I always talk about. We talk about communication after the deal. Okay. To be clear, we are firm believers, and this is why we're even doing this broadcast today. It's because the communication after the deal. Okay. We understand that most of you know, okay, yeah, I need to communicate while I'm in a contract. We get it, right? That's when we have an opportunity to shine. We still need to plan for it, but it's after that transaction is closed, when you no longer have the obligation to communicate with your client, when there's no longer an agenda, when there's no longer a commission out there. But after that deal closed, that's when the vast majority of real estate agents stop communicating with their clients. And when I say vast majority, I'm talking about what? 80, 90%?
Yeah. I think 90% is a fair number these days.
That's when those leads go to Zillow, and you pay for those leads to come back to you if you pay for Zillow leads. But that statistic right there is how Zillow earns most of their money. It's because agents do not communicate with their clients.
$1.8 billion.
Yeah.
In 2021, guys.
Yeah,
so much agents
right.
paid.
So if you have an effective communication plan, your clients aren't going to be entertaining other agents that start to track them down when they're on Zillow. Any agent that comes to them, they're going to say, nope, I've got somebody. With that effective communication plan, that is the goal. And then, of course, so we talk about contextual, right? Nathan feels one way about sending recipes, football schedules, that sort of thing. For some, I think there's a balance there. There's communicating and sort of establishing that meaningful connection that is outside of business, because oftentimes that's when we can build more of a personal rapport with them. But the idea is to continue to add value after the transaction is over, right? And some would argue, yeah, football calendar really doesn't add much value because I never watch football. So
yeah. And I'm going to, not that you were attacking me, but I'm going to defend myself, because I do say that stuff. However, as you know, I always talk in absolutes, and I get in trouble by my wife from that all the time. I try to do my best. But so you can send that stuff out, but before you do that, you need to be sending real estate relevant stuff, right? If you've got past clients, they need to be on a market snapshot. They need to be on an MLS search. And a lot of people get kind of confused by that. If you have a past client, a seller, not even a seller, if you just have someone that owns a home that's in your database, they should be on a once a month drip from the MLS that says, hey, here's what's going on in your neighborhood. From there, then you can start adding in the football schedules and things like that. we have an agent that gives us notepads probably every 6 months at this point, because it's our like refrigerator side of the refrigerator notepad. And she straight up told us, she said, these have been the most successful marketing tool that I've had, obviously outside of educating her clients. And she said she'll have her clients, they'll reach out and they'll go, hey, we're out of notepads. Bring us one, because nobody goes to Office Max or Office Depot anymore and buys a sleeve of notepads, so they kind of rely on her for that. But
Right.
she's also delivering them actual MLS data, actual value around, what her business is, which is being a real estate agent.
Right. And in my opinion, guys, that all plays into considerate communication. Don't send your clients a bunch of junk. If you do an effective job at creating that meaningful connection through a communication plan with your client, you're going to have an understanding of what their needs are. You're going to have a solid understanding of what they're looking for, where you can add value. They will tell you. They will literally tell you. You do not have to guess. If you just ask them, hey, what sort of information are you looking for once we close this deal? This may be the largest purchase that they have. This is, yes, they are living in their home, but this is a huge asset. So what information can you provide for them that's going to be valuable once the deal closes? And I think it's also important to hit the point that, hey, look, we've had a great relationship up to this point, but just so you know, for me, this is the beginning. This is the beginning of our relationship. This is the beginning of me being able to demonstrate why it's important, if you are buying and selling real estate, to have a realtor that is valuable, that is going to continue to add value. Okay. We talk about people not bouncing around doctors. If you find a doctor that you really like, that has great bedside manner, that understands you, that gets you, that you connect with, it's really, really difficult if you're put in a position to have to find another doctor. And, while we are not doctors or healthcare professionals, I get that. We should still operate with the same idea of creating that meaningful connection with our clients. That's what we want. We want that level of commitment to our services from our clients. And if we're able to do that successfully, guys, you will increase the value of each and every client that you have in your database. Okay. I promise you. You will increase the value of that client. They will send you referral after referral after referral, some more than others. But on average, a client is going to refer your services 4 times. 4 times, guys. And if you catch them at the tenant stage when they're renting, and if you're able to get in early, then you're really able to ingrain yourself on their real estate journey and be that fiduciary and that advisor to them throughout their real estate journey. Is that what you want to call it? Buying real
absolutely.
estate? Yeah.
And man, speaking of doctors, that's actually a really, really good example. And before I continue, please go look up the Internet Leads Suck class before I continue with what I'm about to say, because I don't condone internet leads. But that being said, right, we don't typically switch doctors very often. And I think there's probably a good reason for that. Once someone gets that intimate with you, and they've been in all your nooks and crannies, right? You don't really want to make that move. And as funny as that is, it's the same thing, for the guys that I knew who were really, really good at cold calling internet leads, or just, working cold leads in general. One of their rules of thumb was, hey, if I can keep this person on the phone for 40 minutes and them tell me about their dream home and everything they want in real estate, they're probably not going to call anybody else. And I guess that's how I'm relating that, right? If you spend that much time with someone on the phone and they've told you about all this stuff, they don't want to go tell someone else that story. They're going to work with you. And really, that's how you lose your database, is if you lose that connection with them, they're going to get on the phone with someone who will give them that service and will provide them that value and listen to everything that they're looking for in, the purchase of their home or even the sale of their home.
Mm-hmm.
Dathan and I were just talking about just all the stuff that you really need to listen to. Just selling someone's house isn't about just pricing it right and getting good photos. Although you've probably heard me say that, because really at the end of the day, that's what it is on our end. But there is an emotional side to selling the home. And that's where you really need to listen, to what these people want when selling their home. If they're wanting to get out of there and get a bigger, better place or whatever, they need a different part of town. It's probably where you should put your focus, not on the house that they're trying to sell, but on what they're trying to buy.
Right. That's what tugs at the heartstrings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so going back to the doctor analogy also, when we talk about communication, it's also, you need to listen and hear how they want to be communicated with, but you also need to establish how you are going to communicate with them, right? So when you go into the doctor's office, they're not going to sit down and be like, yeah, just reach out to us whenever, send us a smoke signal or write us a sticky note and leave it on the front door. They're going to tell you, hey, if you need help, emergency, and your arm's cut off, you call 911. If your arm is almost cut off, call our nurse's desk, right? Maybe not that. It's a bad example, but they're going to tell you based on certain situations, this is who you call when something happens. And then they're going to tell you, hey, we're going to do your blood work whenever that comes in. Here's how we're going to communicate with you. It's going to go through the portal, or we're going to give you a call, or, if it's bad, we're going to leave you a voicemail and you got to come in, which is always scary. But, they're communicating with you and they're telling you, this is how we are going to speak to you. And then at the same time, they're sitting there listening to everything that you're saying and figuring out how to communicate with you as well.
Right. So so just to recap, it's establishing those communication channels. This is this is how I will receive the information most effectively. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
But you said something in there that I don't want to gloss over. Okay. Because in my opinion, by far the most important part of effective communication is active listening. Guys. Okay. And
what'd you say?
That's where I think a lot of people get tripped up, because we tend to, and we forget to listen, right? So for agents out there, when you're talking with your clients, zip it, guys. Just sit there and listen. And it's something that takes practice, right? Especially if you're a talker or if you're uncomfortable with silence. You have to practice. But active listening is by far the most important component to effective communication.
I'll give you something to live by during every meeting that you have with a client, especially new clients. The person who spoke the most thinks the meeting went the best, or thought the meeting went the best. So if you're in a meeting and you realize that you did all the talking, you should really be recapping and saying, well, did I hear anything anybody else said? Because that's usually the way that it goes. So if you can get your clients to speak the most during a meeting, they probably think it went better than what you thought it went. But yeah, we were just talking about, just lack of communication and hearing what clients have to say. We used to see this all the time with agents. They go on listing appointments. The client says, I want to call once a week, but the listing agent's more concerned about getting that listing agreement signed, getting another listing under their belt. And they miss that part about the client just wants a simple phone call, a simple check-in. And that can be tough in certain markets. The market that we're going into, that can be tough to reach out to a seller and say, hey, I got nothing new to report to you. Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it also opens up that opportunity. And this goes back to the original communication plan, right? Where you're sitting down telling them like, look, if your home is not sold in X amount of days, we need to reduce the price. Here's everything I'm going to do to make sure we market it as best we can. If it hasn't sold, we can probably default back to the price, right? Unless there's some just crazy glaring issue with the property, right? it smells awful or something like that. But again, price solves all, you know.
Yeah.
You drop that price enough, someone will come in and fix the smell for you.
Of course they will. Of course they will.
Yeah. And so, but it goes back to that it opens up that opportunity for you to go in and say, hey, I'm going to communicate with you every Thursday, just like you asked. And, you know, if the home hasn't sold in X amount of days, like we need to have a heart to heart. We need to have a real conversation about, you know, what your guys' plans are. And again, that also goes into listening. Some people might say, you know what? I'm completely fine with where we listed at, and I'm completely fine with sitting on the market for 6 months. And, you know, if you've got that, man, I haven't used this phrase in a long time. If you've got that commission breath, right? And you want that house gone in 15 days, but they're sitting there going, I don't care if it takes 6 months. You guys are at two opposite ends of the spectrum, because they're probably going to want to list a lot higher than that property will sell for, you know, versus if you've got a client who's like, look, I want to get another house under contract, or they're in a situation where they got to move out of state. It's like every month that goes by, they're losing a mortgage payment. You know, we had a client back in the day, I think this was like in 2010, their mortgage payment was like $2,500 a month. And we had their home on the market for like 4 months. And you start to look at that, and it's like from day one, we probably were about $10,000 overpriced. And if we had just dropped that price by 10 grand 4 months ago, which is what they had spent on mortgage payments, we probably would have had the house sold. Yeah. So, you know, that active listening goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to provide you guys an opportunity to begin to know your clients, understand their short-term and long-term goals, and, you know, find out about them. You know, maybe they are big football fanatics. Maybe they do love, you know, pies at Thanksgiving time. You know, that active listening, you're going to begin to pick up on cues and begin to understand and really get to know them. And if you can deliver something, a tailored communication experience to your clients, they are going to remember who you are. I promise you. So, you know, the point of this is to create a communication plan. And All City, we are a collaborative environment. So Nathan and I had this idea. We're going to create 3 different plans for you guys. Okay. Well, we're going to work together on creating 3 different plans. So what your job is, All City agents, what your job is, we want a master buyer communication plan, a master seller communication plan, and a master tenant communication plan. Okay. Obviously, the needs and wants and the way you communicate with each one of those people are different. Okay. So if you're a listing agent, or if you're a buyer's agent, or if you work with, you know, tenants primarily, or landlords listing properties, let us know what sort of items you have in your communication plan that have been successful, right? That have proven to be valuable to either one of these folks. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to combine all of those answers, and we're going to also do our own homework. We're going to go out and we're going to ask our most successful agents. We have an understanding of what an effective communication plan takes, but we want to hear from you guys. So make sure, put it in the comment section. We are going to take all of that information, and we are going to create something that you can actually use as almost like a checklist when you're in a buyer's interview, or when you have a listing appointment, or when you're talking with tenants looking for an apartment. Okay. And the idea here is to implement these communication strategies with each and every one of your clients. And then once you've done that, the hard part, guys, is making sure you follow up with that communication plan. Okay. If you have a client that wants to hear from you every day, guess what? You have got to make time. You've got to figure out a system so that you can communicate with that client every single day. Okay. So a couple things here for you people that are insanely busy. Okay. What this is going to do, if you sit down with a buyer at an interview and you're talking about communication, you're talking about their plans, you will have a written communication plan down that it has answers, that has details about that client, that has answers about their short-term, long-term goals, pricing objectives, likes, dislikes, all that sort of thing, family members, kids, birthdays, pets, all that fun stuff. Well, you have that in a format that you can then hand off to a virtual assistant or your assistant or your husband, your wife, your sister, it doesn't matter, someone that's helping you with your business, and say, hey, put this in my database. Make sure that this client, that all this information is put in my database. And guess what? You just saved yourself a ton of time. But if you're wanting to leverage your time, you cannot do that if everything is contained in your head. So you have to have a plan, and that's what we're going to provide for you guys. So our promise to you is that by next week, we're going to do this next Thursday at 1:00. We are going to begin to release these master communication plans for our All City agents, okay? We'll post them in All City Connect. That way they're there for you to take and use as you see fit. So, Nathan, you got anything you want to add to that?
That is it on that front. Just to reiterate, guys, this is for everyone. And more importantly, it is for future clients and past clients. We were just saying, we, feel like most agents do a great job of that communication skills between, with their current clients, but more so the past clients. And like David,
you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Perfect timing on that.
I know. That's effective communication.
That is effective communication right there. Don't overlook this data. When we talk about, this is actually a great point, and a good reason why we skipped over this week, not skipped over it, but prolonged putting together your database, getting people's birth dates, anniversary dates, how many kids they have, how old their kids are. These are all different ways outside of providing them with, real estate agent data, property information that you can communicate with your clients,
Yeah.
That being said, I mean, if you're only sending people birthday cards, good luck. You should do some real estate stuff alongside of that. But if you're doing the real estate stuff and you're remembering people's birth dates, you're, delivering Easter baskets to their kids on Easter or whatever, their dog just turned 1 and you're providing a goodie bag for that. You're reminding these people every time you see them that you're a real estate agent. And it's very important to put all that info together.
Absolutely. So guys, that's what we got for you this week. Thank you for coming on. For those of you that have joined us live, we really appreciate your time. We want to organize this for you folks. So that's part of releasing these communication plans over this next week. Okay. So please provide some feedback. We want a feedback loop here. What has been successful for you? What has worked? We can include that in our plan and we will thank you for it. Again, it's not about helping ourselves and serving ourselves, but it's about really helping other agents, right? It's not, even if they're not with All City, it's about helping our community of agents be better fiduciaries to our clients. And I think by far the most important part of that is communication, right? That is certainly what's important to us as agents. It's critically important that you communicate effectively with your clients and you put a plan in place and you set proper expectations. That way, that ensures, again, the value of that client will increase dramatically if you continue to bring value and to communicate effectively with them, not only during the transaction, but after that transaction is over. So, Nathan, you got anything you want to add, man?
That is it. Be here next Thursday, 1:00.
Next Thursday at 1:00, folks.
Place.
Same time, same place. Hey, is that St. Patty's Day? That was a terrible.
Is it St. Patty's Day? Is that what that is?
Sorry if I offended any Irish people with my horrible accent.
Check my calendar. I don't have the holidays turned on there.
We need what was it, Trevor.
We need Trevor back, our top producer rep. Now we've got a true Canadian, Brandon Potter, as our top producer rep. But our Irish top producer rep, he's no longer with us.
No longer. So anyway, guys, Thanks for listening. We'll be back Thursday at 1:00. We're going to continue this conversation. And again, participate, folks. Send us some information. Give us some feedback, about obviously these communication plans, but also what do you guys want to hear? We don't just want to guess. This is part of our effective communicating. What do y'all want to hear? So let us know. Give us some comments. Thanks for joining us, folks.
I was going to add to that. Tell us your wins. Because I find that a lot of times agents will give us, some random anecdotal evidence of, a way that they got a deal. And what's funny is a lot of times it's something that they did one time. And if they stuck to it and did it over and over and over again, they might actually get more deals out of that. So I know I've been kind of bitter towards the whole anecdotal evidence on real estate agents, but I'm becoming more and more open to it as I hear more and more stories. So please share those. If you have a win where you're like, hey, I did this for my clients or this for my database and it got me a deal, share that. Because if each and every agent went and did whatever you did once, twice a year, that could translate into a lot of business, and it could translate into Zillow not making $1.8 billion off of real estate agents next year.
That's it, folks. That's our goal. That is our goal. Let's have an impact on Zillow's bottom line. Let's do it.
Right.
Come on, guys. Agents unite. Let's make this happen. All right. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. All right. Next Thursday, 1:00. We'll be here. Talk to you soon.
See you there, guys.